J. Robert Oppenheimer dies in a laboratory accident at UC Berkeley. The details aren't fully known. What matters is what he leaves behind. In the United States, nuclear research doesn't stop, but it just lost one of its most important people. Without Oppenheimer, the future Manhattan Project, still unnamed at the time, falls years behind before it even begins. This is one of the first major changes needed for Operation Valkyrie to realistically take place. Germany enters a period of political instability. The Weimar Republic is struggling with economic pressure. The Nazi Party gained support during this time, but it didn't fully dominate German politics. Opposition parties remained active, and Hitler's rise was slower than it was historically. Either way, Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. New laws begin targeting Jewish and dissident academics, pushing many scientists out of the country. But unlike in our history, most do not leave immediately. Some wait, unsure how far the regime will go. Others believe their work will protect them. As a result, several important figures tied to research remain in Germany longer than they did historically. Werner Heisenberg, with secret support from the Wehrmacht, helps illegally shield key scientists from political pressure. Research tied to the military is given extra funding that Hitler isn't aware about. At the same time, the Wehrmacht begins modernizing earlier than expected. All right, now we can start the real action. First, Germany goes into Austria, easily annexing the country. Then, Germany demands the Sudetenland, a small part of Czechoslovakia. At first, the British and French oppose it, but after some swaying, they let Germany take it. And then, Germany just invades the whole country, making Slovakia a puppet. If that wasn't enough, Germany now goes into Lithuania. Well, not like an invasion, but forcefully annexes some land in Memel. They were about to be eaten up by the Soviets anyway. The Allies were now on edge. So when the Germans and Soviets announced the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, they knew something was about to happen. The British and French guaranteed the independence of Poland against Germany, basically meaning if the Germans invade Poland, the Allies would join the war. But as we know, that didn't stop Germany. Poland would face an invasion from two fronts. There was just no way for them to defend against it. In the West, the Allies would declare war on Germany, so they kept their promise. But they wouldn't really do anything else. Hitler took the opportunity to prepare for multiple operations, the first one starting up north. There was a lot going on in Scandinavia, including the Winter War. But what Germany was focused on was Norway. The British mined the waters around Norway, so they couldn't trade their iron with Germany anymore. This was a big problem. Iron was a super important resource. The Germans would act, invading through Denmark and up into Norway. They stood no chance, falling to the Germans within weeks. Next, Hitler's plan focused on the Benelux. Without any warning, the Germans would barge through the Netherlands and Belgium and into northern France. The Allies would rush to defend, but they would make a grave mistake. They left a part of the front line undefended, and the Germans were about to blitz through that spot with all they had. Germany would trap over 200,000 troops at Dunkirk, capturing a lot more than expected. After that, France was basically undefended. The Germans would breeze through the country, taking Paris and the rest of France. They became a puppet state. Over in North Africa, since Italy joined the war after the fall of France, there's a new front. At first, Italy pushes the British and Egypt, then the Italians get pushed. Then, with some help from the Germans, the front stabilizes. Talking about Italy, they've decided to invade Greece, and Hitler is furious. Not only because he has to postpone the invasion of the Soviet Union, but also Italy is losing. Mussolini has to call for backup. So the Germans begin their march into the Balkans. Hungary and Romania join the Axis quickly, especially Romania. The Soviets had taken some land from them earlier. Bulgaria and Yugoslavia join the Axis. Yugoslavia then leaves. Then Yugoslavia gets invaded.
Bruh.
The Germans help the Italians invade Greece, breezing through the country. In late 1941, the Axis would hit. The invasion of the Soviet Union was Hitler's main goal since the beginning. The Soviets were the opposite of prepared. Stalin had to send in unprepared units to the front lines, causing many mass encirclements. The Germans would take Ukraine and the Baltics. It looked like there was no stopping them. In Leningrad, a siege would begin, and in Moscow, German troops would creep in. But then it happened. The winter began. It completely halted all German advancements, forcing them to dig in. The Soviets would bring in their specialized Siberian troops to the front, slightly pushing back the Germans. Whoa, hold up. Look at this. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe. I'm on a mission to 25,000, we're almost there. So come on, subscribe, like the video, do all of that good stuff. Anyway, in other news, the Japanese had gone on a rampage recently, including bombing Pearl Harbor, an American port. America would declare war on Japan, and then Germany would declare war on America, instantly putting all of America's attention on the war in Europe, which was not a good thing. Back at home, this instantly sped up the process for Operation Valkyrie. Many high officials in Germany had heard about the operation and began to actively plan how it would happen. They wanted to overthrow Hitler, one way or another. After the winter was over, the Axis got back to their advance. In the south, Germany pushed easily, taking a lot of oil fields in the process. In Stalingrad, a major battle would occur. And unfortunately for the Germans, they would get encircled, a tragedy for them. This only heightened the need for Operation Valkyrie. Hitler was making too many mistakes. In Africa, the Italians had invaded up to El Alamein. The upcoming battle would decide who would basically win the African front. The British would win, pushing the Italians back, a huge loss for the Axis. Erwin Rommel would secretly blame Hitler because of it, since Hitler didn't send enough manpower or equipment to Africa. Operation Torch would occur, American troops landing in Morocco, rushing to kick the Axis out of Africa. Rommel would escape, but not without leaving over 200,000 Axis troops to die in Tunisia. In the Eastern Front, the Germans would be squeezed out of the Caucasus, now on the defense against the Soviets. At this point, the Allies have finalized their plans to invade Europe, starting with Italy. They would land in Sicily and advance upward. But in this timeline, the Battle of Monte Cassino would end in a close Axis victory. Rome would stay in Axis hands for longer than expected. In France, D-Day would commence. Rommel would reinforce the Normandy beaches heavily, along with all the other parts, disobeying Hitler's orders to mainly defend Calais. When the landings would happen, they would be way more close. In this timeline, bad weather would cause the Allies to retreat. D-Day would be a failure. Not many losses for the Allies, but the Germans still just successfully won a war-changing battle, the Battle of Normandy. Back at home in Berlin, Rommel was loved by all of the high ranks after his victory at D-Day. And if they loved Rommel and Rommel hated Hitler, you can see where this is going. In July of 1944, Hitler would be at his briefing table, unaware that Operation Valkyrie had begun days earlier. Colonel Stauffenberg, a high rank, had placed a briefcase containing 2 bombs under the desk. One second Hitler was thinking about the war, the other second he was dead. Just like that, Operation Valkyrie was successful. Now, it was hard to explain to the public what had happened, but it was first labeled as a terrorist attack. Then later it was revealed that it was an intentional coup. That's what the public would know. Other governments, though, they knew the truth immediately. A new junta government would take over, with mainly Rommel in power. If I were to go into how many individual figures who would fight to be leader, this video would be way too long and complicated, so we'll just keep it with Rommel as the main guy. Okay, so the point of Operation Valkyrie had 2 purposes. First, stop doing all the mistakes Hitler was doing, and try to reach a peace deal with the Allies, since Germany technically isn't the Nazi government anymore. And don't take this timeline too seriously, it's not meant to be too realistic, but the Allies would begin to think about ending the war. In the East, the Soviets would sign an armistice. It was actually a better deal on their side. The Germans probably would have been able to advance and encircle back into the USSR if they really wanted to, but instead, they would stop the fighting. For now, of course. In Japan, they would surrender. The United States didn't have their nukes yet. Because of the death of Oppenheimer a decade ago, they couldn't atom bomb the Japanese yet, but they could still heavily bomb Japan with their air force, which is what they did. The Soviet invaded Manchuria, and after some other factors, the Japanese surrendered. After months of talking, 2 treaties would be signed in early and mid-1946. The Americans would have nuked the Germans if they could have, but because they had no nukes yet, they decided to just end the war before support got too low at home. The Treaty of Antwerp would see the Germans gaining a lot of land since the beginning of the war. Italy would be split in 2, Norway would be liberated, and a bunch of other things. The Treaty of Helsinki would see the Germans, yet again, gaining a lot of land. Multiple puppets would come out of occupied Soviet territory. The Romanians would gain land, etc. By the end of the war, there would be 3 main sides in the aftermath. The Free West, who contained all of these nations. The Axis bloc, which contained all of these nations. And finally, the USSR, which was a superpower by itself. This is the world if Operation Valkyrie succeeded. Now, trust me, I know it's unrealistic. But don't take it too seriously. A fan messaged me about their scenario, and I made it into a video. Big thanks to that fan, by the way.